Have you ever noticed how the world seems to favor some people? Not in a loud, obvious way. Nothing so dramatic, but quietly, almost secretly. As if doors you have to struggle to push open, swing effortlessly for them. Opportunities seem to find them. Ideas land in their lap at the right time. And you might tell yourself it's luck, or talent, or some advantage they were born with that you simply don't have. But what if you're wrong? What if there's a hidden mechanism behind all of that? A simple, profound, and deeply personal force that you have absolute control over. A force so powerful that when you finally engage it, the universe itself appears to rearrange itself around you. Not out of magic, but out of a law as real and as constant as gravity. Tonight, let's talk about that force, and the quiet, daily decision that brings it to life. Most people live their entire lives on the surface of things. They see the result, the finished masterpiece hanging in the gallery, the moment of triumph on the stage, the applause echoing. They see the canyon, vast and awe-inspiring, carved into the earth, and they call it a miracle of nature. And it is. But in calling it a miracle, they unknowingly forgive themselves from the responsibility of creating their own. Because a miracle is something that happens to you. Something external, granted by fate or fortune. But they never see the water. They never stand at the rim and understand that this grandeur is not an event, but a record. It is an autobiography written not in words, but in stone, by the most patient author in existence. Consistent, gentle force. They never contemplate the gentle, persistent, unremarkable flow of a single stream over centuries. Day after night after day, through storms and droughts, through seasons of bright sun and frozen silence. That's where the real work is done. Not in a cataclysm, but in a consistency so quiet it's almost invisible. The kind of work that doesn't seek applause because there is no one there to applaud. It is work performed for an audience of one, the future itself. Think of the water. It doesn't argue with the rock. It doesn't shake its fist at the immovable obstacle and decide it's all hopeless. It doesn't wake up one morning, look at the millennia of work ahead, and say, "Today, I don't feel like flowing." It doesn't postpone its duty until conditions are perfect. It simply continues. It finds the path of least resistance not out of laziness, but out of profound intelligence. It conserves its energy for the long, long journey. And in that continuation, something impossible becomes inevitable. The rock is shaped. The canyon is formed. Not because the water was powerful in any single moment, but because it was present in all moments. Your mind, your life, is that rock. And every thought you think, every action you take, every small decision you make toward a definite purpose, is that drop of water. Alone, it means nothing. It is trivial. It evaporates under the heat of daily life without a trace. You have felt this evaporation 1,000 times. The burst of inspiration on Monday that fades by Wednesday. The new plan forged in January forgotten by February. A single drop cannot change the shape of anything. But connected to the next drop, and the next, and the next, something shifts. It ceases to be a collection of isolated events and becomes a flow. A direction emerges. A path is traced, and a flow, given time, carves a new reality. It begins to have a memory. It begins to have a will. It begins to wear down not through brute force, but through a gentle, unwavering insistence. This is how character is formed. This is how skill is mastered. This is how a life of meaning is built, not from a few grand, heroic leaps, but from an unbroken chain of modest, faithful steps. The problem most people ignore, the silent tragedy, is that they are always starting new streams. They live in the springtime of effort, always at the source. They are always digging new, shallow channels in the sand, thrilled by the burst of initial speed, the splash, the sound of movement. It feels like progress. It feels like creation. But the soil here is loose. It cannot hold the water. And by noon, they watch their efforts soak away into nothing, leaving only damp sand and a faint memory of ambition. Then, tomorrow, disheartened but ever hopeful, they pick a new spot a few feet away and start again. They mistake activity for achievement. They confuse a splash with a current. They believe that starting is the same as progressing, when in truth, starting is the easiest part of all. It is continuing that contains the secret. They look at the unresponsive world and conclude their idea wasn't good enough, their dream wasn't valid, their voice wasn't unique. When the truth is, they simply didn't stay with it long enough for the world to hear the signal. Think of a radio dial, crowded with static and fragments of songs. It takes time for a clear frequency to be recognized. It takes repetition. It takes a signal so steady, so unwavering, that the receiver, whether it's the marketplace, the muse, or the people around you, can finally lock onto it. It must become a predictable pulse in the chaos. Most broadcasts fail not because their message is weak, but because they are constantly changing the station, wondering why they can't hear anything clearly. So you must ask yourself tonight, in this quiet space, what are you building? Not in the grand, abstract sense, but in the literal, daily sense. Are you a collection of enthusiastic beginnings? A museum of unfinished projects? A graveyard of abandoned streams? Or are you a current? Have you chosen your channel, however modest, and committed to the gentle, unglamorous, day-by-day work of flowing? Have you decided to trust the process of accumulation, of gradual shaping, of inevitable formation? Look at the canyons in your own life, the habits that feel unshakable, the beliefs that seem carved in stone, whether they serve you or not. They were not formed in a day. They were formed by a consistent drip, drip, drip of thought and action. The same force that created the limiting canyon is available to you now to create one of grandeur. The law does not discriminate. It only responds. The water does not know it is creating a wonder. It only knows it must flow. Your work is not to build the canyon in a day. Your work is to become the water and to trust the ancient, silent mathematics of persistence. Here is the mental trap, the one that keeps the vast majority of people average, frustrated, and living in the shallow sand of unfulfilled potential. It is a silent contract they've signed with themselves, without ever reading the terms. They believe action must follow feeling. They have been taught, by a world obsessed with instant gratification and emotional authenticity, that the sequence is sacred. First, you must feel motivated. Then, you can act. First, you must feel inspired. Then, you can create. First, you must feel confident, energetic, clear-headed, fearless. Then, and only then, can you step toward your purpose. They hand over the reins of their entire destiny to the most fickle, unreliable, and temporary parts of themselves, their passing emotional weather. And then they stand at the window of their life, watching the seasons of their enthusiasm come and go, and wonder why they are perpetually stuck in the same spot, waiting for a spring that never seems to arrive. Think of it with a farmer's clarity. If he only planted seeds on the days he felt like it, on the days the sun was perfectly warm, his back didn't ache, and his heart was filled with nothing but poetic visions of the harvest, what kind of yield would he ever have? The field would be a patchwork of neglect. His family would go hungry. The farm would fail. The farmer knows a deeper truth. You plant when it is time to plant. You tend when it is time to tend. Your feelings about the rain, the mud, the fatigue, are irrelevant to the necessity of the work. The work itself is the point. The consistency of care is the covenant. Or return to our stream. Does it wait to feel like flowing? Does it require a certain mood of the sky, a particular enthusiasm from the clouds, before it continues its journey to the sea? It does not. Its nature is to flow. Its purpose is to flow. Obstacles may change its course, but they do not cancel its imperative. It is defined by its action, not by its temporary state. This belief, that you must feel a certain way to act a certain way, is the great silencer of potential. It is a surrender of your will, your glorious human agency, to the wind. It makes you a slave to circumstance, a leaf tossed by every breeze of emotion. Because let us speak plainly, you will not feel like it. Not always. Perhaps not even most of the time. There will be days when your purpose feels distant and abstract, a faded photograph of a dream. Days when doubt is not a voice, but a thick fog that fills every room of your mind. Days when the comfort of your bed, the endless scroll of your screen, the numbing, familiar chatter of the world, will sing a much more appealing, much easier song than the quiet, disciplined work you have chosen for yourself. This is not a sign you are on the wrong path. This is not evidence that your dream is flawed. This is the path. The feeling of resistance is not a stop sign. It is a mileage marker. It tells you are moving beyond the easy, the habitual, the terrain of the average. The trap is believing that the right feeling is a prerequisite. It is not. It is a passenger. Sometimes it rides up front with you, cheerful and clear, pointing out the beautiful scenery. Those days are gifts. Cherish them. But sometimes that feeling is in the back seat. It is sullen. It is quiet. It is complaining about the long road, asking, "Are we there yet?" over and over. On those days, which will be many, you have a choice. You can pull the car over, turn around, and let the passenger dictate the destination. Or you can keep driving. You can acknowledge the complaint with a quiet nod, and then return your eyes to the road, your hands on the wheel. The car moves forward because you decide to move it forward. The decision to be consistent is, first and foremost, a decision to ignore the tyranny of the temporary feeling. It is a declaration of independence from your own internal weather. It is the understanding that your commitment must be an entity stronger than your mood, that your purpose must be a structure more solid than your doubt. This is where you reclaim your sovereignty, not in a dramatic, external battle cry, but in the quiet, daily whisper you offer to yourself in the mirror, in the moment before you begin. I said I would do this, and so I shall. You are not waiting for the feeling to act. You are acting to create the feeling. This is the hidden alchemy. Discipline summoned in the absence of motivation begins to generate its own quiet kind of fuel. The action, taken despite the resistance, sends a signal deeper than thought to your spirit. It says, "I am in charge. I keep my promises." And from that signal, a genuine, durable feeling begins to grow. Not the flash in the pan of fleeting inspiration, but the deep, warm glow of self-respect. You start to trust yourself, and that trust becomes the most reliable feeling of all. So tonight, identify one thing, one small, sacred commitment you have made to yourself that you have allowed your feelings to veto. And tomorrow, when the feeling doesn't show up, when it sleeps in, when it complains, when it tries to negotiate, gently, firmly, begin without it. Let the action be the prayer. Let the consistency be the proof. And watch as the passenger, eventually, learns to enjoy the ride you have steadfastly chosen to take. This is where we bring in a voice of timeless wisdom, not as a historical artifact, not as a quote to be memoized, but as a living principle as relevant in this silent hour as it was a century ago. Napoleon Hill dedicated his life to a singular, profound study. He observed achievement not as a mysterious accident bestowed upon the lucky few, but as a natural science, as predictable in its workings as the laws of physics or geometry. He looked past the surface drama of success and sought its root system. And in that search, one principle emerged not merely as important, but as the foundational catalyst, the starting engine for everything of substance that could ever follow. He named it definiteness of purpose. But a purpose, no matter how definite, how vividly imagined, is just a map. It is a beautiful, detailed chart of a destination. It shows the valleys, the mountains, the coastline of your desire. Yet a map, left on the table, moves no one. It inspires a dream, but it does not create a journey. So what is the force that turns the map into a voyage? What is the energy that moves you from the harbor of intention into the open sea? Hill called it organized, intelligent effort, sustained with unshakable faith. Let us breathe life into those words, strip them of their formal air, and hear them for what they are, a quiet blueprint for becoming a current. In simpler, more intimate terms, this is the principle of consistency, powered by a specific kind of knowing. Hill understood something most miss. That faith, in this context, is not a vague hope, not a blind wish sent out into the void. It is something far more potent. It is a knowing so deep, so cellular, that it fuels action even when all visible evidence shouts otherwise. Even when the bank account is low, the audience is absent, the results are invisible. Even when you are, to all external appearances, utterly alone with your conviction. And how is that faith built? Not by a single, blinding miracle, not by a sign from the heavens. It is built by the cumulative, daily proof you give to yourself. It is a record you write in the private ledger of your soul, entry by entry, day by day. Each time you force yourself to do the work when you don't feel like it, you make a deposit. Each time you choose the disciplined action over the distracting temptation, you add to the balance. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, no matter how small, you are not just completing a task. You are building the credibility of your own soul with yourself. You are becoming a person you can trust. And from that trust, unshakable faith is born. It is faith in yourself, which then becomes the lens through which you see the possibility in the world. You force yourself to be consistent. You use your will, that supreme, often dormant gift of your humanity, to prime the pump, to initiate the current. At first, it is pure force. It feels mechanical, perhaps even joyless. You are the first drops of water beginning to seep into the parched, hard earth of old habits and ingrained doubt. There is tremendous resistance. The soil does not want to accept it. It feels easier to run off, to evaporate. This phase is not about inspiration. It is about installation. You are installing a new program, line by line, through sheer repetition. But then, if you persist, a miraculous and subtle shift occurs. The force of habit begins to take over from the force of will. The current you initiated starts to develop its own momentum, and that momentum begins to carry you. The action starts to require less conscious effort. The path feels less like a struggle and more like a groove. You begin to move with a certain grace. This is not the end of work, but the transformation of work from a burden into a rhythm. And here, Hill observed the phenomenon that seems like magic to those who watch from the shore. Ideas related to your purpose begin to appear, as if drawn by a magnet. People who can help, books that contain the missing piece, chance encounters that feel orchestrated, they begin to enter your field. This is not because the universe is magically helping you alone. It is because your mind, now consistently tuned to a single, clear frequency, your definite purpose, can finally detect them. They were always there, broadcasting. The signals were always in the air, but you were changing the station every other day, wondering why you heard only static. Now, you are listening to one channel intently, and so you hear the music that was always playing on it. Hill called this the mysterious hand of providence. It seems mysterious only to those who have never been consistent long enough to see the cause and effect, to feel the pattern click into place. When you move with persistent, intelligent effort toward a worthy goal, you align yourself with a fundamental law. You become a receptive point, a vibrational match, for the ideas, people, and resources congruent with that aim. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop forcing doors and find them opening as you approach. But remember, the first move, the essential, non-negotiable move, is always yours. And it must be repeated. You force the current. You faithfully, doggedly, intelligently keep the stream flowing. And through that unwavering consistency, you set in motion a physics of achievement. The current gains strength. It finds its way, and eventually, with the slow, sure force of gravity, it forces everything else into place around it. The map becomes the territory, not because you wished it so, but because you walked it, one consistent step at a time, until the path was worn clear for all to see. Most importantly, for your own believing heart. How do they do it? How do the great achievers, the builders, the creators, those who leave a mark on the world that lasts beyond them, how do they think differently? It is a question that has launched 1,000 superficial answers. Passion, genius, luck. But listen closer to the space between their accomplishments, and you will hear the true rhythm. It is a rhythm that defies the frantic pace of the modern world. It is not that they are immune to doubt, or fatigue, or fear. They feel all of those things as deeply as anyone, perhaps more deeply, for their sensitivity is what allows them to perceive beauty or injustice or possibility in the first place, the very raw materials of creation. The difference, the critical, life-altering difference, is not in what they feel, but in their fundamental relationship with a single, constant force, time. The average person, the one starting new streams in the sand, sees time as an enemy, a depleting resource, a relentless, ticking pressure stealing something precious from them with every passing second. They see the entire mountain they must climb, its peak shrouded in clouds, and then they look at the shortness of the day, the rapid arc of the sun, and they are seized by a quiet, choking panic. This panic, this sense of scarcity, dictates their entire strategy. It makes them frantic. They sprint. They bane their energy and their joy in a furious, unsustainable burst, reaching the first rocky outcrop exhausted and breathless. From there, the peak seems farther than ever, more impossible. The sheer size of the task overwhelms them. So they sit down in despair, believing the mountain was never meant to be conquered. They are, in essence, a clock watcher. They are glued to the face of the clock, agonizing over the movement of the hands, seeing only loss, only deficit, only the inevitable approach of a deadline they fear they cannot meet. But the consistent mind, the mind that has learned to force the current, to act irrespective of fleeting feeling, sees time not as a thief, but as the ultimate ally, the essential, non-negotiable ingredient. This mind understands that you cannot build a canyon in a day or a cathedral in a week. It accepts the gift of duration. This mind is not the anxious clock watcher. It is the clockmaker. Close your eyes and see him. The master clockmaker in his workshop, a world away from noise and hurry. He is bent over his oak workbench in a pool of warm lamplight. Before him lies the most delicate, complex movement, dozens of tiny, gleaming gears, hair-thin springs, and pivots that must interact with flawless, silent harmony. Observe his state. He does not rush. He cannot rush. A single tremor of impatience, a moment of hastiness or frustration, can bend a delicate tooth, misalign a pivot by 1,000th of an inch, ruining weeks of meticulous work. His breathing is slow. His hands are steady. He exists in a realm of pure patience. He has a vision of the finished clock, of course, a masterpiece of precision and beauty, standing tall in a quiet room, its pendulum swinging with a solemn, reassuring rhythm, marking the passage of moments with grace. But his attention is never on that future vision while his hands are working. His entire universe, his entire purpose, is contained in the tiny, brass gear held in the polished jaws of his tweezers right now. The lamplight catching its freshly cut teeth. The exact, gentle pressure needed to seat it perfectly onto its pinion. The soft click of ideal alignment. He places it with infinite care. He makes a microscopic adjustment with a tool so fine it seems like an extension of his own nerve endings. He checks its interaction with a neighboring wheel, listening not with his ears, but with his fingers, for the smoothness of the engagement. He does not do some of the work today and hope the rest will figure itself out or magically complete itself tomorrow. He does the precise, necessary, perfect work of today. And then tomorrow, under the same lamplight, with the same calm focus, he will return and do the same. His faith is not in a dramatic, overnight completion. His faith is in the process itself. His trust is in his own consistency, his own unwavering standards applied repeatedly, without complaint or heroics. He knows, with a certainty that bypasses all emotion, that if he faithfully completes each small, perfect step, the grand result is not just possible. It is a mechanical, inevitable certainty. The final, resonant tick is guaranteed, because every single tick that precedes it has been faithfully, meticulously arranged. This is the awakened mind. It has stopped obsessing over the giant, distant, intimidating peak. It has become devoted, instead, to the quality, the integrity of the next 10 steps on the trail. It finds a profound dignity, a deep and quiet satisfaction in the doing itself. The action is no longer just a means to an end, a frustrating barrier between here and the glorious there. It becomes a ritual, a sacred practice, a daily testament to your own character and craftsmanship. You are no longer just building a businesses. You are making today's calls with integrity, crafting this email with clarity. You are no longer just writing a book. You are weighing the truth and rhythm of this single sentence, here, now. You are no longer just getting fit. You are honoring this one movement, this one breath, with full presence. When you learn to think this way, a fundamental alchemy occurs within you. The anxiety of the future, that gnawing fear of not getting there in time, begins to melt away. Why? Because you finally understand that your power does not exist in the future. It never has. Your power exists only in the present moment, in the gear you are placing now. The future is built entirely, exclusively, of a succession of nows. By mastering the now, you are constructing the future automatically, inevitably. You are building the clock. Similarly, the heavy regret of the past, the old streams abandoned, the time you perceive as wasted, begins to fade and lose its sting. Because each new, consistent action is an act of redemption. It is a quiet statement that today, you are different. You are the clockmaker now. The past is merely an earlier, less skilled version of the mechanism, one you are now wisely, patiently correcting. You are not saving time or racing against it, because you are no longer at war with it. You are collaborating with it. You are using it as the master craftsperson uses a fine tool, with respect, with patience, with a purposeful, loving touch. This is the secret rhythm, the antithesis of hustle, the opposite of the frantic, burnout chase. It is a slow, sure, confident pulse. It is the tick of the clock you are building, not watching, but building. So tonight, in this stillness, ask yourself, in my deepest desires, in the work that truly calls to me, have I been watching the clock, or have I been learning to build one? Choose one gear, one tiny, perfect, essential piece of your masterpiece. It might be 15 minutes of study without distraction. It might be the first honest paragraph. It might be a single, mindful conversation. Your entire mission is not to assemble the finished clock before sunrise. Your mission is to seat that one gear perfectly, to perform that one small action with your full, calm, clockmaker's attention. And then, tomorrow, you will choose another. And in that rhythm, that patient, faithful, consistent rhythm, you will find a peace so deep it feels like the most potent form of power. You will realize you are no longer climbing a mountain, straining against gravity. You are building a cathedral of your own design, one stone, one day, one quiet, deliberate tick at a time. And you will discover the most astonishing truth of all. The building of the cathedral is itself the sacred act. The steady ticking of the clock is itself the beautiful, enduring music. So, what does it look like when everything falls into place? Do not expect a parade. Do not wait for a headline, a sudden windfall, a dramatic unveiling. That is the fantasy the surface world sells, the climax of a movie. It keeps you looking outward, waiting for a ceremony that never comes. The real awakening, the one born of genuine consistency, is far quieter, far more subtle, and infinitely more profound. It does not happen to you. It emerges from within you, like the first green shoot of a seed you planted long ago and had almost forgotten. You will have to be paying close attention to even notice it at first. It is the day you realize the struggle has left your voice. You are speaking about your work, your project, your dream, and you hear your own tone. There is no frantic hope in it, no desperate need for validation, no sharp edge of anxiety. There is a calm, quiet assurance, a simple stating of facts, because you are no longer trying to convince the world or yourself. You are simply reporting on a reality you are in the process of building. You speak from the mountain you are on, not the one you are desperately trying to climb. And an ordered, aligned, focused mind is the most powerful creative force on this earth. It is a transmitter on a single, clear frequency. It naturally, lawfully, begins to attract, to build, to manifest the circumstances that match its vibration. It sees opportunities invisible to the scattered eye. It draws resources the frantic hand would push away. The outer world has no choice, in time, but to eventually reflect the inner world you have consistently, patiently, faithfully built. The canyon appears. The clock ticks. The current reaches the sea. So tonight, as you lie there in the quiet, let all of that be true in the distance. Do not make a grand, overwhelming plan for the next year. Do not feel the crushing weight of the entire canyon you wish to carve. Instead, simply decide on the stream. Just one. One clear, simple, meaningful action that is irrevocably connected to your deepest purpose. It must be so small, so manageable, that it feels almost trivial. That is how you know it's right. The ego wants a grand gesture. The soul knows the power of a faithful repetition. And tomorrow, when you wake, force yourself to do it. Not until you feel like it, but until it is done. Do not negotiate. Do not debate. Let the action be a sacrament of your new sovereignty. And then, the next day, as the sun rolls around again, you do it again. You are not building a canyon yet. You are simply being water. You are not building a clock yet. You are simply seating a gear. You are not changing the world yet. You are simply changing yourself, one irreducible commitment at a time. Be the water, not the rock that resists. Be the current, not the splash that dissipates. Be the clockmaker, not the clock, watching time pass. Force yourself to be consistent, not for a week or a month, but until it becomes who you are. And then, one day, you will pause. You will look around at the life you have built, the peace you carry, the work you have done, and you will understand. You will watch, in awe and in quiet gratitude, as everything you truly need, softly, steadily, inevitably, falls into place around the person you have faithfully decided to become.